All right, let's dive into one of history's coolest and most debated legends, the death ray of Archimedes. We're going to ask the big question: could one of the ancient world's greatest minds really turn ordinary sunshine into a devastating weapon of war? Let's get into it.
So, let's set the scene. We're going way back, all the way to 212 BC. This is the peak of the classical world, a time of clashing empires and some of the most brilliant thinkers in human history.
And where are we? We're at the Siege of Syracuse. This is a huge deal. You have the unstoppable Roman Republic trying to conquer a super wealthy Greek city-state on the coast of Sicily. It's a classic ancient showdown.
Okay, so picture this. You're a Roman soldier on a ship. Your fleet is enormous. You're feeling pretty confident. You're sailing right up to the city walls, and you're expecting the usual stuff, arrows, catapults, maybe they'll dump some boiling oil on you. Standard siege warfare.
But then, something happens that makes no sense. A blindingly bright flash of light hits you from the shore. And before anyone can figure out what's going on, the wooden sails and the hulls of the Roman ships just ignite, one after another. There are no arrows, no fireballs, just light, and then suddenly, fire. And the person who supposedly pulled this off? Syracuse's own resident genius, Archimedes. Now, this story has been told for centuries, and it leaves us with this one central burning question. Could one man, using only the knowledge available back then, really turn the sun itself into a weapon? To even begin to answer that, we've got to put the legend aside for a second and just look at the science. Because while it sounds like total magic, the principle behind this so-called death ray is actually pure physics.
It all comes down to one key idea: energy density. Sunlight feels warm on your skin, but it's way too spread out to do any damage. The trick is to collect all the solar energy hitting a huge area, say the size of a tennis court, and then focus all of it, every last bit, onto a tiny spot, maybe the size of a coin. That is how you get intense, weaponized heat.
So how would Archimedes have done it? Well, the theory is pretty straightforward. First, you'd reflect sunlight using the best thing they had at the time, highly polished bronze shields. Second, you'd need hundreds of soldiers to angle those shields just right so that all those individual beams of light meet at a single focal point on a Roman ship. And third, at that one tiny point, the combined energy would crank the heat up to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to make wood just burst into flame.
Okay, so the physics checks out, right? But could you actually do that in the chaos of a real battle? For a long time, people just wrote it off as a cool story. But more recently, scientists and engineers have actually tried to build it.
And this is where the debate really gets interesting. Check this out. Back in 1973, the Greek Navy got 70 sailors with mirrors, and they actually managed to set a wooden boat on fire in just a few seconds. Their verdict? It's possible. But then, in the 2000s, the show MythBusters tried it, and they called it busted. They argued that trying to keep all those mirrors focused on a moving, bobbing ship for long enough to catch fire was just wildly impractical.
So, as a weapon, the jury's still out. But here's the crazy part. Archimedes' core concept is alive and well today. We've built massive, modern death rays not to fight wars, but to power our world.
It's called concentrated solar power, or CSP, and its design is literally a modern echo of Archimedes' idea. You have thousands of mirrors, they're called heliostats, all focusing sunlight onto one spot on a central tower. But instead of burning a ship, that intense heat boils water, creates steam, and spins a turbine to generate clean electricity.
And the scale of these things is just mind-blowing. The Ivanpah Solar Power Facility out in California, for instance, uses 173,000 computer-controlled mirrors, all tracking the sun and beaming its energy to one spot. And the temperature they create at that focal point on the tower? You guessed it, over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the exact same temperature that the death ray would have needed. They have literally created a small, man-made sun on Earth.
The energy there is so intense that if a bird happens to fly through that focal point, it's just vaporized. Instantly, it leaves a little trail of smoke. The workers at the plant have a pretty grim but memorable name for it. They call them streamers.
But the principle doesn't just live on in power plants. It's also alive in modern warfare. The military hasn't given up on directed energy weapons, they've just evolved the idea, shifting from visible light to something you can't even see.
This is the active denial system, better known as the pain ray. Now, unlike Archimedes' weapon, this thing uses microwaves. The beam only goes skin deep, where it heats up the water molecules and creates this immediate, overwhelming burning sensation. It's incredibly painful, but it's designed to be non-lethal. It just makes you want to get away from the beam as fast as humanly possible.
Okay, so we've looked at the physics, the modern experiments, the power plants, and even the military's pain ray. So where does that leave us? What's the final call on Archimedes and his famous solar weapon?
All right, here's the bottom line. Did Archimedes actually burn the Roman fleet with a bunch of shields? The verdict is almost certainly not. The sheer difficulty of coordinating hundreds of soldiers to aim perfectly at moving targets was probably just too much. But, and this is the important part, focusing on whether it actually happened kinda misses the point. The real story here isn't the weapon, it's the mind that imagined it.
You see, Archimedes' true genius was his incredible grasp of physics. We're talking more than 2,000 years before we started building solar farms, and he already understood a fundamental truth. Light is energy. And he realized that if you can control where that energy goes, you can wield the power of the sun itself. The death ray may be a legend, but the idea behind it, that's a powerful reminder that the greatest weapon has always been the human mind's ability to see the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be.